My late grandfather served in the police force from Soviet times until the late 90s. To be more precise, he was a detective in a small town near Moscow. He was a very quiet and gloomy man, but when asked about his work, he would become a little more talkative. In my opinion, his work was the only thing he truly loved. When I was younger, I was already fascinated by the stories of his career. I spent many evenings with him in the kitchen, asking about the most interesting cases he'd worked on. After my grandfather passed away, I found a thick notebook in his office, a sort of diary where he had recorded details about the strangest, so to speak, cases. I had to ask my grandmother several times for this diary. When I finally read it, I thought of my grandfather as a kind of mathematician. No flair, no personal opinions, just dry facts. He noted the location of the body, the criminal's profile, suspects, and so on. There were a few theories, some brief notes. Even in his free time, it seemed he was still solving cases in his mind. Most of the entries related to stories I'd heard from him before, but a few I'd never heard about at all. I even considered writing a book about these events. I took photos of the places I'm going to talk about, so I'll accompany my stories with those. Not always, for obvious reasons, will the photos be of the exact locations. Sometimes I couldn't even enter the buildings, as the areas and the city as a whole are riddled with criminal elements. Some places, like the dormitories packed with ex-convicts and addicts, were simply too dangerous to visit. One thing I can assure you, there will be no colorful descriptions of monsters here. Some of the cases are indeed mystical, but they can be explained if you stay within the boundaries of what we know. But the darkness, the disjointed reality, and the gritty atmosphere of Khrushchev-era back alleys, that I can promise you. Oh, and about the photos, don't expect professional quality. I'm no photographer, and instead of a DSLR, I've only got a simple digital camera. Well, let's begin. The first case I want to tell you about took place in 1993, and to this day what happened remains unexplained. 2 photos will be attached to this post. The first shows the house where the incident took place, and the second, the staircase where the body was found. For those who are curious, it was in the passage between the 3rd and 4th floors. So, at around 10 p.m., an investigative team arrived at the scene. What they found was something they were not prepared for. The body lay on the staircase. Blood pooled around it. The head had been severed and lay nearby. The edges of the wound were ragged, as if chewed. According to my grandfather, the body was dressed in tracksuit pants, a sweater, and slippers, all torn in dozens of places, revealing wounds beneath. The body was fresh, confirmed by the forensic expert. It had been less than 2 hours since the man's death. This was later corroborated by the man's widow, who lived on the 4th floor, just 3 meters from where the body was found. She had discovered the corpse when she went to look for her husband, who had left to take out the trash around 10:30 p.m. After 15 minutes, when he hadn't returned, she became worried. She thought he might have been caught up with his fellow drinkers, who often gathered at the benches outside. She went to find him, and after stepping out of her apartment and down a few steps, saw his body lying in a pool of blood. She was intoxicated, and further questioning didn't yield much more information. Now, here's the strange part. No one else in the building heard anything. No screams, no growls, no sounds of a struggle. This was odd, given the poor sound insulation of the doors in those days, which were little more than plywood. Several witnesses, including some who had been drinking outside, claimed they hadn't seen or heard anything unusual. My grandfather initially suspected a dog attack, but after inspecting the scene, he ruled it out. There were indeed 2 dogs living in the building, but they were both small and clearly incapable of causing such damage, something confirmed by the autopsy. The head had been severed as though by the jaws of a large animal. The spine had been crushed at the point of the bite. One of the wounds on the leg left a particularly clear imprint of the animal's teeth. According to the expert, it was a perfect impression of both the upper and lower jaws, something that rarely occurs in practice. The jaw resembled that of a dog's, but much larger, 48 teeth instead of the typical 42. A few things to note: in 15 to 20 minutes, a large dog could indeed decapitate a person. I know this because I own a large dog myself. No, my dog hasn't bitten anyone's head off, but she can easily crush a large bone in under 10 minutes. Still, there would have been noise, a lot of it. Unless, of course, the dog immediately attacked the throat and silenced the victim quickly, which could explain the lack of screams. But then, why had no one seen a massive dog, far larger than a German Shepherd, roaming the area? Such a creature would surely have been noticed. And there was something else. The blood was only found near the body. There was no trail, nothing leading up or down the stairs. It was as if the man had been placed there and then quietly decapitated. My own dog once killed an aggressive stray, and there was blood everywhere. It dripped from her mouth as we walked home. So where was all the blood? Something, or someone, appeared on that staircase between the floors, silently killed a grown man, and left without a trace. That's the end of it. And the official explanation? They blamed it on a stray dog and closed the case. They even warned a few locals who hunted stray dogs to be more careful.